but it bends toward justice, Reverend King told us, quoting Unitarian minister Theodore Parker from 1853. Parker was an abolitionist decrying slavery and racial injustice 169 years ago. So how long is this arc? And how patient do we expect Black people to be? How patient would you be if you experienced this lack of equality, this injustice often accompanied by violence, this centuries-long pattern of being treated differently and lesser than because of your race? Race. In the 1960s and 70s, in grade school, high school, and college, I learned that race was a biological reality. But now in 2022, the Human Genome Project results make it clear all humans are 99.9% biologically alike. Some are going to have red hair, some will have blue eyes, some will have brown skin, but we're all 99.9% the same. We are one human race. There is no biological basis for creating different races. White people invented a separation that does not exist. In the last couple of years, I've learned many more things that contradicted what I learned earlier in my life. For instance, Homo sapiens emerged in Africa about 300 years ago, but using the term race to refer to different skin color, physical features, and genetic heredity didn't happen until the last 500 of those 300,000 years. Humans created this concept of race when slavery went global in the 1500s, and going global meant exporting this new idea to what was to become the United States. David Roediger, a professor of American Studies and History at the University of Kansas, wrote that, quote, "The world got along without race for the overwhelming majority of its history. The U.S. has never been without it." End quote. So white people invented the concept of race about 500 years ago. They invented a way to separate people, to create a caste system that places light-skinned people above dark-skinned people. Why create this separation? This is from the Smithsonian National Museum of African American History and Culture. Quote, "Race, while not a valid biological concept, is a real social construction that gives or denies benefits and privileges. American society developed the notion of race early in its formation to justify its new economic system of capitalism, which depends on the institution of forced labor, especially the enslavement of African peoples." End quote. So suppose you're a wealthy white European male in this new world and you're trying to make a go of it in this new capitalist system. And a short aside about this new world, obviously not new, already home to many Native American tribes. And note that most or all of these white European males were Catholic or Protestant. And in the 1400s, before 1492, and before the Protestant Reformation, when all Christians were Catholic, the Pope's doctrine of discovery said it was just fine to take lands from their native people if they were not Christians. Okay, back to the white Christian European male trying to make a go of it in the Americas with this new economic system of capitalism. Taking land for free helps, and getting people to work for free would really help. Sure, you can buy and use mules and oxen to get some of the work done, but they can't pick cotton or tobacco. But buying and using people, enslaving human beings. Toni Morrison in The Origin of Others writes that it was, quote, "It was probably universally clear to sellers as well as the sold that slavery was an inhuman though profitable condition. The sellers certainly didn't want to be enslaved, and the purchased often committed suicide to avoid it." Later in The Origin of Others, she quotes what was written in diaries and memoirs of slave owners about the violent punishments they delivered to slaves. And she states that, quote, "As fascinatingly repulsive as these incidents of violence are, to my mind, the question that surfaces, one that is far more revealing than the severity of the punishment, is, who are these people? how hard they work to define the slave as inhuman, savage, when in fact the definition of the inhuman describes overwhelmingly the punisher. The necessity of rendering the slave a foreign species appears to be a desperate attempt to confirm one's own self as normal, end quote. She tells us that these Christian men created an other to separate themselves, not just from the people they enslaved, but from the intolerable emotions that would threaten their egos and self-worth if they didn't create this separation. So they socially constructed this illusion of separateness with Black people. Black people, them, or us, depending on who you are, and us, them, separation of our oneness. A racial category that was invented, and I'm uncomfortable using it. I had a roommate from Cameroon, another from Syria. I worked at Northern Arizona University with a boss, coworkers, and students that were people of color, who my boss, by the way, reminded me are the global majority, not the minority. I'm uncomfortable with racial categories for these unique, diverse individuals. Categories that separate them from me, but I use them because I'm listening to Ibram X. Kendi, who in How to Be an Anti-Racist says, quote, "What a powerful construction race is, powerful enough to consume us. Race is a mirage, but one that humanity has organized itself around in very real ways. Imagining away the racist existence of races in a racist world is as conserving and harmful as imagining away classes in a capitalistic world. It allows the ruling races and classes to keep on ruling. If we stop using racial categories, then we will not be able to identify racial inequity. If we cannot identify racial inequity, then we will not be able to identify racist policies. If we cannot identify racist policies, then we cannot challenge racist policies. And if we cannot challenge racist policies, then racist power's final solution will be achieved. A world of inequity none of us can see, let alone resist. Terminating racial categories is potentially the last, not the first, step in the anti-racist struggle, end quote. So we have Black people in a country that has never been without the social construction of race, and we created systems built upon the belief that Blacks in particular are not created equal. We created systems and systems and systems over centuries that maintain this. Quote, "Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets," end quote. I'll say that again. Edwards Deming, the world-renowned process improvement and systems thinker, said that every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. Note he didn't say intentionally designed. Here are 5 examples of the results of our current systems design. The average white family in the US has roughly 8 times the wealth of the average Black family, and white college graduates have over 7 times more wealth than Black college graduates. 2, while the United States represents about 4.2% of the world's population, it houses around 20% of the world's prisoners, with Black people imprisoned at a rate 3 times higher than white people. Black women are imprisoned at 1.7 times the rate of white women. 3, in 2020, the U.S. had an estimated 580,000 unhoused people, 39% of whom were Black, even though Black people are only 12% of the U.S. population. 4, though Black and white people use drugs at similar rates, Black people are imprisoned for drug crimes at 5 times the rate of white people. 5, police in the U.S. continue to kill Indigenous, Latinx, and Black people at significantly higher rates, as much as 350% more frequently than white people. There are even greater racial disparities with non-fatal uses of force by police. Those are examples. Every system is perfectly designed to get the results it gets. And we have old belief systems and legacy policies and systems that get these results today. The system gets tweaked from time to time, and some say that, at least in writing, most laws and formal written policies no longer contain discriminatory language. They say that now it's time for people to pick themselves up by their bootstraps and do the hard work to get ahead. But formal written policies are not the sum total of a system and are not the same as practice. And leveling the playing field now in writing after 4 centuries of having the deck stacked against you doesn't create reality. Let's stick with the deck stacked against you metaphor. Imagine you and your ancestors have been in a card game that's been going on since 1619. For most of these 400 plus years, the dealer stacked the deck so he won every hand. The dealer has all the chips and some IOUs from you and your ancestors. Imagine what the card table looks like. The dealer with mounds of chips in front of him and you with nothing in front of you. Now imagine an impartial person steps in and catches the dealer stacking the deck, puts a stop to it, installs a machine-operated impartial way of shuffling the cards and dealing the cards, and says, from now on, the game will be fair. Now, the chips stay where they are. There is no redistribution of wealth. That would be socialism. You can succeed without the help of others if you work hard enough. This is America, and we value rugged individualism, not socialism. Remember all the financial institutions that got bailed out after the 2008 Great Recession and the bonuses that CEOs got? That was a redistribution of wealth. Bernie Sanders reminded us then of what Martin Luther King Jr. said in 1968, quote, "This country has socialism for the rich and rugged individualism for the poor," end quote. In an interview about the book, Rugged Individualism and the Misunderstanding of American Inequality, Mark Rank, one of its authors, said that, quote, "The fact that America has been steeped in the ethos of rugged individualism prevents us from effectively addressing poverty and inequality as a nation. We tend to view poverty as the fault of the individual, and therefore you simply need to pull yourself up by the bootstraps to get ahead. As a result, we provide minimal assistance to lower income families. The result is the highest rates of poverty among the industrialized countries," end quote. I see the root cause of much of this is our illusion of separateness, our country's original sin that one could say was the lack of a covenant to affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Very smart and wise people see this separateness as the delusional illusion that it is. In a 1946 commencement speech at Lincoln University in Pennsylvania, the oldest historically Black college in the US, Albert Einstein said, "There is a separation of colored people from white people in the United States. That separation is not a disease of colored people. It is a disease of white people. I do not intend to be quiet about it." Thich Nhat Hanh said that, quote, "We are here to awaken from our illusion of separateness. True self is non-self, the awareness that the self is made only of non-self elements. There is no separation between self and other, and everything is interconnected. Once you are aware of that, you are no longer caught in the idea that you are a separate entity," end quote. Like Thich Nhat Hanh, Einstein's view of our illusion of separateness extended beyond humans and race. In a letter he wrote in 1950, he said, quote, "A human being is a spatially and temporally limited piece of the whole, what we call the universe. He experiences himself and his feelings as separate from the rest, an optical illusion of his consciousness. The quest for liberation from this bondage or illusion is the only true object of religion. Not nurturing the illusion, but only overcoming it gives us the attainable measure of inner peace." I'm working to liberate myself of this illusion of separateness. This is my spiritual practice. I'm not fully there yet, but I do think that we get to choose whether we want to be self-reliant, rugged individualists, or one with all. My sense is that when we choose the path of being as interconnected as possible, When we choose to be as close to oneness as we are able, we're more likely to have an attainable measure of inner peace and make this world a better place. Thank you.